Hey, so we're coming into the forest here and we're taking a lot of it down. It's very destructive, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about how what we're doing is considered regenerative. In many ways it's not in the first instance. You know, we're coming in here, we're disrupting the ecology of the land, we're tearing down a forest that's well established, that's got lots of nice trees that are pulling in carbon and nitrogen out of the atmosphere, fixing it into the soil, building soil, creating habitat for birds and insects. And we're coming in here, we're removing that. How is that regenerative? So, there's many ways it could be regenerative. Firstly, is the diversification of this forest, is what our main goal is. Here in Madeira, eucalyptus has taken over a lot of land. There's a bit of a history about that as to why and how it's taken over the land, but regardless of going into too much, it has taken up any available space it can, and as a non-native it's highly competitive and will outcompete the native species of trees. It's a fast growing tree, and in any space it can, it will take over. Seeds are predominantly transported by birds. There's not many animals, there's not like squirrels over here that will go and plant their year's harvest and then die and accidentally plant a whole forest full of trees. Birds transport the seeds around on this island, and this is a big thing of the diversification of the forest. In this forest we predominantly have 3 species of tree. We'd like to change that. First, we have to disrupt this system. There's many reasons why we're doing that. We are humans and we live on this land. I need to create a house for me and my family. I need to keep myself warm in the winter, and I need to eat food. I've worked in construction for many years in the UK, and I've built houses for people, and the materials that we use to build modern housing, and we rely on central heating systems and materials shipped from all over the world, is not a very ecological way about going about building a house. What we're doing here is we're taking this hardwood forest of eucalyptus and acacia, and we're going to utilize it to build our home. We're going to build our animal housing, we're going to build our entertainment areas, our workshops, guest housing, anything so that I can help nurture this land and grow with this land. We're using materials from this land to build our home and to build our, all of our places that we need to work in. So at first it can be quite, it's not nice for us to have to take down all of these trees, but I can see the bigger, grander picture of doing something like this, and it may take some years. But what we're doing, by chopping and dropping a lot of this system, we're speeding up the rate of succession. We're turning a lot of this invasive species back into the ground quicker than it would. And if you look over there, it gets incredibly congested, and lack of light. Immediately we come into a lack of light. And so anything that's dropping onto the ground floor, i.e. the seeds from this oak tree, are being out-competed by non-native Australian species of trees. We want to remove a lot of these from the system, open up the light again, and plant different species of tree to diversify our system. This is very important to us, to mix the forest back up, to create native species of trees from Madeira Island, like Laurel Silva. Right behind me we have some. We already have these natives on the land. We want to add fruit and nut trees, productive systems for us humans, to grow food for our community and ourselves. We want to get animals onto the land so that they can help turn some of this biomass back into soil at an accelerated rate and contribute to our food production. We need to eat. I need to feed my family. And Buying foods from all over the world, getting shipped onto the island or shipped to your country, is not necessarily very sustainable. If you're purchasing local meat, regeneratively raised and pasture-fed cows or chickens, eggs, beef, whatever it may be, then you can contribute towards the sequestration of carbon. If you're buying foods, monoculture grown foods, grown strawberries grown through the summer, etc., etc., you're contributing to a very terrible system. We cannot help it, we need to eat. We work busy lives and we go out into the supermarkets and we buy food to feed our families. But right here we want to create a closed loop system. We want to grow produce on our land that can sustain us throughout the year, that can contribute to our local community and contribute to the land. So by diversifying our system, by growing lots of avocados, walnuts, chestnuts, soursop, mulberry, lots of herbs, arasash, lots and lots of different trees, we're going to diversify the system. We're going to create less of a fire risk. We're going to add security in food for ourselves. We now live on an island and everything has to be imported. I got a boat ride here, and just in that one boat journey they used 40,000 litres of fuel. So imagine being on an island where everything has to be come in, all your food, all your supplies, or we can start looking at growing our own resources, growing our own firewood, growing our own houses. And I mean that by, if I plant a bunch of oak trees now, in 50 years time my children can harvest those oak trees and use them to build their next house. And so this is what we're talking about: regenerative agriculture, regenerative agroforestry. By diversifying the system, by mixing the species into our forest, not just 3-4 species of tree, and by utilising what we have here for ourselves and for our needs now, we're going to create a much better system than one that was already here. And on our tiny little acreage, we can change the trees from eucalyptus, which if you look over the island of Madeira is absolutely widespread, and on our little sprinkle of land there'll be different trees. And when the birds come and pick up those seeds and move them onto an empty space, there's more chances that we're going to spread oak trees, cedar, avocado, whatever, chestnut. We're going to spread those kind of seeds instead of the seeds of a eucalyptus. Some of the wonderful benefits of this gentle approach we are doing, where we're coming through by hand, chainsaws, machetes, chopping and dropping, is that we're getting to look at the forest floor and identify what's above us. I spotted this oak leaf when we was up there clearing out, and we did not know that there was an oak tree on here. If we come through with a digger or heavy machinery, we could have potentially missed this. As we're in winter now, oak trees are deciduous, which means they drop their leaves, and we're having some very, very high winds at the minute. Not right now, but yeah, and those trees could have, the leaves could have fallen off of the tree. By the time I get around to this area chopping the trees, I may not have been able to identify it as an oak tree. But by coming through here with hand and clearing out all the bush, we've managed to spot this leaf on the forest floor. But what this means is there's acorns all around here, and when we open up this canopy and allow more light to come in, these little acorns are going to sprout and become seedlings, and we can take that oak, little baby seedlings, and replant that round the land. We've also found a pine tree right behind us, and we've found pine cones all around here too, which means the exact same thing. It's been dropping its pine cones. There's going to be lots of pine seeds around here, just waiting for the canopy to open up and so that they can get their turn in succession. We're going to really look after this spot and come back in the spring and over the following years, and when those seedlings come through, we'll take them out of the ground, we'll look after them, and we'll redistribute them around the land. There'll be no better tree to plant than one that comes from this climate, from this soil, with its mother tree here and here. It's absolutely perfect. They're the kind of trees that we want on the land. So eucalyptus has this papery bark that it drops, and it's also a very oily wood, which makes it a high fire risk. And last year in Madeira, up on the mountains, they had a lot of fires, a lot of wildfires. Unattended land can leave a lot of this dry material laying around, which increases the risk of fire in the area. And so by removing the eucalyptus from the system and creating a more diverse range of trees around the landscape, we're minimizing the risk of widespread fires. It's impossible for me to articulate everything I feel I want to say in a short video without waffling on too much, but when I look around already and I see the light that we've created to come into this space, and we're hardly touched it really. When I look around and I see the timber poles that are going to be used to build our buildings, and I look around and I see piles and piles of firewood that are going to keep us going for many years, I can envision our land, our tree rows, our ponds that harvest water in the event of a drought, our entertaining areas that are south facing so that when we've got guests round we can capture the most amount of light, enjoy our present moment with our friends and our family while processing all of the food that we're growing in these areas down here. This is what permaculture and agroforestry is about. It's about humanscaping this land to one that's going to give great benefit and value to our community in social aspects, in education, in food security, fire security, drought tolerance. This is what we're doing here. We're implementing permaculture design technique, and although it can look quite destructive at the start, because it is, we are changing this landscape not to be one of overgrown non-native species. We're going to utilize their power, their invasiveness, their quick growing sharp technique, and we're going to create loads of soil. We're going to plant over the top of that all of our productive food rows. We're going to completely change this space over some years, and it will be incredibly warm for not just us, but for all the birds that come back here when they're on their big journeys, and they come back to this land and they find lots of berries, lots of fruits, lots of nuts, ponds to bathe in and drink from. Not just the few trees that they'd come into land and nest in. They're going to find a completely different system. They're going to eat those berries, those nuts and those seeds, and they're going to go on their journey, and when they poop them out, they're going to spread mulberry trees. I'd like to see one eat an avocado seed. It's going to be a big bird. But this is what we're changing it from. This is what we have when we come into the landscape. Australian cheese nut is the only species that's growing here, sat under acacia and eucalyptus. How is anything going to grow when the next in line is a non-native species? The human element of us coming into this land is about chopping it and dropping it. We're turning it into the land. We're then taking these trees, we're turning them into our house. We're turning it into our barbecue area, our animal housing, our timber that's going to fuel the fire to keep us warm in the winter. And in its place, we're going to plant fruit, nut, and hardwood tree species for the next generations to come. We're going to grow mushrooms on the logs. We're going to walk to the market with our produce and sell chestnuts to the local community. We're going to trade that for some geese eggs, beeswax. This is what regenerative agriculture or agroforestry systems looks like. And unfortunately, you have to break a few eggs to make a cake. So this is a great little example of what we're doing around the land. We want to get rid of all of this and chop it and drop it. We're chopping that down and turning that back into the soil. We're keeping the root system in there. It's going to do kind of like this. This is a bit of a pollard, a very small scale pollarding. And you see how it's still got its root system in. The main trunk has been cut, but it's putting out all this new growth every year. Well, we can come along and turn that back into the ground. Now that's creating biomass for our future trees. You see how it's not taking up any light? It's very close to the ground. We can do this on a smaller scale with things like hazel and willow. They call it coppicing. You know, we can selectively take out some of these by the root and it won't come back. Chances are there's billions of seeds around here and they'll continuously come for years and years and years while we're doing that. But we can control the system and we can chop and drop that and we can turn that back into the ground. We can take this right down and it will sprout out again and it will give us greens. We can chop that greens and turn it back into the ground. This is what we're doing here. This is why we're not pulling everything by the root. We're going to plant our fruit and nut trees here. This will continue to grow. We come along, we drop it down into the earth, we create soil. It's a continuous cycle. These ones here are going to feed our system for years and years and years. Here we have another wonderful example of the kind of plants we require in our system. This eucalyptus has got a really good root system going on. But at the minute, when I come and plant my fruit and nut trees through here, it's going to take up too much light. So I want to turn it back into the ground. I can drop leaves, I can drop the whole tree. Might as well drop the branches while it's standing up. Easier for me. And then when I turn the tree back down into the earth and chop it up, it's just going to decompose and feed my future plants. Just in chopping those few leaves off, the light that's coming through here is much different. You can feel it immediately. And when you start doing that all around, all through, the light that comes through to this forest floor is incredible. So this is kind of an example of a system we want to set up. We need these trees. These support trees are so important to the biomass of the forest. They're not necessarily a tree, you know, that it is important to us in terms of food, but it's important to us in soil building, and we can utilize the speediness of growth that eucalyptus has. They grow really quick, they're really invasive here, and so they're going to grow up a lot, very fast, very tall, nice canopies, nice bushes when they're this young, and we can just chop that up, drop that back into the ground, and that's going to continue to build the forest floor for our future plants.